Hey everyone, this is Pete, and it's been a while since we had a look at a magazine on this channel, but inspired by the recent release of the Fun Factor podcast, hosted by Ty Shelter and Aidan Moher, two journalists, authors and general writers, having a look back at 90s games magazines, I felt inspired to pick up where we left off with this. So here we've got issue number 3 of Page 6 magazine, which, if you've been around on my channel for any length of time, you'll remember is a publication that my dad, my brother and I all contributed to at various points in its history. This issue here, number 3, is from 1983, I think. We'll check that in a moment once we open it up. And this is at the point where it was still a subscription-only magazine. It had just come out of being a club newsletter. And within one issue, editor Les Ellingham had decided that he wanted to make the magazine into something nationwide that Atari owners and Atari users could enjoy across the entire UK. And he succeeded in that. The magazine ran until 1998 in one form or another, including a bit of a stint on the newsstands midway through its lifespan, before returning to being a subscription-only publication in its latter days. So here's issue number 3, Page 6, an Atari Users magazine. It was still just 50p at the time. And this issue promises cricket maths, redesigning characters, calendar, software reviews and more. And something mysterious about the Atari 400's keyboard there. So let's open up and have a look. So we begin with a page of adverts, just like we have done in the previous ones. We've got Gemini Electronics again. They were a regular advertiser in these early editions of Page 6. They were also the company that English Software grew out of. I've subsequently discovered. So this was the shop that that basically became English Software. So you see, at this point they already published Airstrike and a few other games, and eventually English Software proved so popular that they basically moved away from the shop, moved away from selling other things into just software publishing, not just for Atari but for other platforms as well. So once again, this advert is promising the ColecoVision for £149, 2-year guarantee on Atari computers, new Atari VCS computer keyboard converts your Atari into a real computer. Call now for details. I'm not sure what that is, because the only keyboard control I know of for the VCS, the 2600, is just a numpad, and it doesn't turn it into a real computer. It's just certain games make use of that instead of a joystick. We stock Atari 400, 800, Sinclair Creativision, don't know what that is, Vectrex, Commodore VIC, 64 computers. Commodore VIC and 64 computers. We stock all Atari, Activision, Parker, Spectravision, Apollo, Imagic, Mattel and Coleco cartridges. Call for best prices. Lots and lots of Atari software. So this time we are highlighting the arcade conversion Zaxxon, Nautilus, Jumbo Jet Pilot, Apple Panic, Centipede, Miner 2049er, Slime, Intruder, Alien Swarm, Preppy, Pac-Man, Math Pack, Choplifter ROM, Soccer, Airstrike 2 ROM, plus many, many titles. Yeah, this was a really good time for Atari 8-bit games. Relatively early in the grand scheme of home computers, but some of those games there are some of the strongest on the platform. Then further down, we've got the Games and Software Club again, where you can hire games and absolutely definitely not pirate them. Apply now and get your first 2 games free. And then again, your friendly professional printer, Birbeck & Sons, who at this point are still the ones who are printing Page 6 as well. So let's move over to the contents page. So this month we have editorial, calendar, news, letters, cricket maths, user groups and contact, arcade action reviews, character redefinition, the character generation utility, keyboard techniques, a character designer, again, so another utility for redefining characters, software reviews, master directory, first steps and club call. Once again, editor is Les Ellingham. It was Les as the editor for the entire run of the magazine. Printed by Birbeck & Sons Limited and published by Abacus, which, as you may recall from my look at issue number 2, was a nationwide user group that had been set up pretty much specifically to publish Page 6. So I don't know how well you can read this bit down here, but I'll read it for you. Page 6 is a users magazine and relies entirely on readers' support in submitting articles and programs. The aim is to explore Atari computing through the exchange of information and knowledge, and we cannot unfortunately pay for articles published. We hope you will gain satisfaction from seeing your work published, and in turn we hope you will learn from articles submitted by other readers. Yeah, so writing for exposure was a thing right from the beginning. And to be fair, this did start out as a user group newsletter. Later on, Les did start paying people for contributions, but at this point it was still very early days for the magazine. They didn't know how long it was going to last. And so, yeah, they weren't able to pay people. But you got your name in print, which was enough at the time for a lot of people. Whilst we take whatever steps we can to ensure the accuracy of articles and programs submitted and the content of advertisements, Page 6 cannot be held responsible for any errors or claims made by advertisers. Of course. All right, let's move on. Okay, so we have Les's editorial introduction to this issue. Where are the programmers? You all know that the UK glossy magazines feature very little about the Atari, and one of the reasons put forward is that nobody sends them any material. Well, I'm beginning to wonder whether that is true. While much appreciation goes to those readers who have submitted articles and programs, the initial response seems to have dried up, and we need more articles and programs for future issues. If it is true that most people do not submit Atari programs to magazines, I wonder why. There could be two reasons. The first is that nobody writes any programs and the majority of owners spend all their time playing games. If that is what you're doing, then put down your joystick, read the articles and programs in this magazine, and start writing some programs. It is not that difficult and you really don't know what you're missing. The real joy in owning a computer is in creating something of your own. Simple or complex, it doesn't really matter. When you finish your first program, you will experience great satisfaction. The second reason could be that you look at some of the truly remarkable commercial software and think, wow, I could never write anything like that. Okay, so maybe you can't, yet. So be content with what you can write. Pick up some ideas from magazines, improve them, or write something similar. Pay attention to the little details of presentation and you can write a program, long or short, that you can be proud of. Sit down now and start to write something. When you're finished, send it in to show other readers that we Atari owners can, after all, write programs. The magazine is totally dependent on your contributions. Yeah, this is something that Les comes back to frequently in the editorial. We talked a little bit about this last time. One of his biggest struggles all the way through the lifespan of Page 6 was making sure that people cared, basically getting people to care and give a shit, basically, to contribute, to write programs, to use their Atari computers for something other than games. And this was a big thing in a lot of early home computer magazines. There were games magazines. There was Computer and Video Games was one of the first ones. And that, I think, is one of the glossy magazines that Les is referring to there, because Computer and Video Games published program listings in its early days, type-in listings for all manner of different computers, including some that I've never heard of. They did occasional Atari ones, but you were more likely to see things for stuff like the VIC-20, the Commodore 64, the Spectrum, the BBC, that sort of thing. And yeah, it's something that Les very much struggled with throughout the lifespan of Page 6 was making people care about the Atari, because he cared enough to write a whole magazine about it, or to edit a whole magazine about it. And there were contributors who cared enough to submit stuff to the magazine, but there weren't enough of them. There weren't enough people to really keep things going initially, and that worried him. So that's what that editorial is about. But, like I say, Page 6 managed to stick around until 1998 eventually. So it did pick up steam, it did pick up an enthusiast community, but it was somewhat outside of the mainstream. Atari computers remained something of a niche interest thing. So until the ST came along, really, which enjoyed a little bit more mainstream success, the Atari 8-bit was very niche interest. But, as we know these days, niche interest communities tend to be some of the most passionate communities as well. Alright, other stuff we've got down here. We've got an advert for Bell & Jones here, with most Atari products in stock at keen prices. There's our favourite adjective again, keen. Good range of independent software in stock. Call and see us soon. Easy parking in multi-storey car park, only a few yards from the shop. And then over here, we've got Mr. M. Ward is back again with Atari 400 and 800 programs. He's got 5 different cassettes on offer, which are $4.95 each, or 3 for $12.95, or 5 for $19.95. I don't know where those programs came from, and he doesn't say either. So I don't know if he wrote them himself and he was self-publishing them, or if they were public domain software that you gather together onto cassettes or anything like that. It doesn't really say, but yeah, there they are. Okay, first of our type-in listings for this issue, we've got a calendar. Want to know what day you were born? Want to know what day your granddad was born? Find out all the dates you need with this calendar program. So just have a look and see if we can figure out what it's doing. So enter the year you wish to review, type year and press return. Yeah, so I guess what that does is that creates an on-screen calendar. It creates an on-screen calendar showing what day of the week it was on different dates in different months for the year you entered. That seems to be what it is. So yeah, it's a fairly simple program. It just calculates all that for you and then sticks it on screen. I don't know if it prints it well as well. It doesn't look like it, but because Atari Basic could communicate with the printer quite easily through print commands that talked to the printer, I think lprint was the one that you used to turn a print statement from printing to the screen into printing to the printer. So you could convert that quite easily into something that would print out those calendars for you. Okay, over to the news. A new independent disk drive has just become available in the States. The Rana 1000 disk drive features switchable single and double density and has a few extra features such as automatic write protect and LED readout of disk contents. The really interesting news though is that it sells in the States at 1/3 less than the price of the Atari drive, which would have been the 810 at this point, which was a beast. It was a big chunky beast, and it basically had a whole other computer in it to control it, so it was very expensive. But disk drive ownership seemed to be a lot more widespread among Atari owners than many of the other micros that were around at the time. So a lot of stuff was distributed on disk. Page 6 did an issue disk with all the programs from each issue. They had a public domain library that was on disk only. And there were a lot of pieces of software, games, utilities and things that were only distributed on disk because it was more practical for them to do that, to be able to have that random access. A new book from Compute that is an absolute must if you want to dig into your Atari is Mapping the Atari by Ian Chadwick. Seems to be in short supply at the moment, but is well worth hunting down. Yeah, a book like that would have been essential for programming because it would tell you all of the locations in the Atari memory and what they did. And so that was essential for machine code programming, but it was also useful for programming in BASIC because it let you know the numbers that you need to put into poke commands in order to achieve various functions. So anything that wasn't covered by built-in basic keywords, you would use poke commands. You would pick a location in memory that you would get from mapping the Atari or something similar, and then you would poke a value into it to achieve something, whether that's changing the screen color, turning the cursor off, disabling the attract mode, all sorts of things you could do. Then on here, Antic magazine is now monthly, which is great news. Several people have written to ask where they can buy Antic, Analog and Compute. Try Callisto Computers in Birmingham or Gemini Electronics in Manchester, both of whom stock these magazines. If any other retailers keep them, let us know. Yeah, Antic, Analog and Compute were all American magazines. Antic and Analog were both Atari specialist magazines, like Page 6. And Compute, if I remember correctly, was more general purpose. It was more general home computers, but it supported the Atari because at the time there was probably a bit more support of the Atari home computers in the States. That sort of changed over time and it became a bit more of a European thing as years went on. And certainly the current Atari scene, I would say, is probably slightly more active in Europe than it is in America. There are American fans of Atari 8-bits, as there are in anything, but yeah, home computer use has sort of shifted in popularity and regions over the years. But at the time this issue came out, Antic and Analog magazine and Compute magazine would have been in their prime. Moving on. Next up we have the input page, which is a letters page. So this first one, dear sir, in issue 2 you published 4 in a row. The more astute of your readers may have noticed the deliberate mistake of the spurious line 10,045 return. This prevents the text window being repositioned on the screen and may cause it not to be displayed on some TVs, but otherwise it should work okay. I've been hearing a lot of comments about the quality of 48K upgrade boards for the Atari 400. I've had a Maplin board fitted at their Birmingham branch, and this is working fine in spite of the use it gets at club meetings. There appears to be a propaganda war being waged by suppliers of these boards. Perhaps your magazine could publish an unbiased review of these. But what you could say apart from it works or it doesn't work, it may be of interest only to electronics experts and not the normal user. And Mike Aston from Wednesbury. I think he was part of the Birmingham User Group. That was the reason that page 6 existed in the first place, because I've definitely seen his name before. And yeah, I guess it was probably because he created the 4 in a row program that was in issue number 2. So here's Les's response. The question of what upgrade is the best quality and value is certainly one which most 400 owners will be interested in. As you say, some suppliers do tend to put down boards put out by competitors on the grounds that the chips used are likely to cause overheating. To get an expert review, we would probably have to ask one of the manufacturers, and the views are unlikely to be unbiased. Perhaps more to the point would be to ask owners who have had experiences what their experiences have been, or to ask owners who have had upgrades what their experiences have been, I apologise. If you have had your 400 upgraded to 48K, write in and let us know. Who did you go to and why? Were you given any guarantee? Have you had any problems, and if so, what happened? Did you get a repair or replacement without bother? We would also be pleased to hear from suppliers and retailers. What makes your board reliable? Now, the thing they're talking about here is upgrading the Atari 400, which was not designed to be upgradable. The Atari 400 was designed to be a self-contained system. In some places it was even outright marketed as a games machine rather than a home computer, and some speculate that that's why it has that horrible membrane keyboard rather than a proper keyboard, is because it was primarily designed to be for entertainment and games, whereas the Atari 800, which had a proper keyboard and it had expandable memory slots that were easily user accessible, that was designed to be the more serious computer. But people still upgraded their Atari 400. I believe we upgraded ours to 48K at some point, and to my knowledge, that system is still working. I haven't turned the 400 on for a while. I tend to use the 800 XL or the 130 XE most of the time. But yeah, certainly last time I turned the 400 on, it was working absolutely fine with 48K of RAM. So I don't know where we got ours from, but Mike Aston would have probably liked to know. Moving on. Dear Page 6, great magazine. At last, one just for Atari users. I have a couple of questions to ask. In the basic manual there is a description of R&D. The variable of expression in parentheses following R&D is said to be a dummy with no effect on the numbers returned. If this is the case, what effect will a 0 or 1 in the parentheses have on the outcome of a random number, as several programs seem to use these? An example from an actual program is line 70, r equals int, or for integer, brackets 0 plus 1. S equals int, brackets R&D 1 times 16. So the random number command in Atari Basic, much like the random number command in other versions of Basic, will create a number between 0 and 1 with decimal places. And so if you want to create a larger range of random numbers, what you would do is you would tell it to just do an integer, so it strips out everything after the decimal point, and you multiply it by something, and then you add what you want the minimum value to be. So if you wanted a number between 0 and 16, you'd do this. Integer random times 16, and if you wanted a number between I guess this would give you a number between 1 and 2, because this doesn't actually, no, that's an integer as well, isn't it? So that will give you 1 or 2. That's basically a heads or tails one, I guess. Also, I've just had a 48K memory put in my 400, which seems to work okay, no patterning problems. Is there something I can type in to check that I have actually got a 48K memory in there working to its full extent? Or would I expect to see printed on the screen with 16K, 32K or 48K memory, assuming no program as such has been typed in? From Mrs. E.E. Matthews from Walton-on-Thames. So Les's response to that is, I've heard it said that a 0 used as the variable produces a totally random number, while a 1 prints the next number in a series of random numbers, though what truth there is in this I don't know. It may just be based on another machine's method of choosing random numbers. Does anyone know whether this is true? You can check your memory by typing FRE0 after you power up, don't boot DOS if you have a disk drive. With 16K you should get 13326 because Basic is taking up some of the memory. With 32K 29710 and with 48K 37902. The seeming discrepancy with 48K is not due to your being done out of some memory, but it's because the Basic cartridge overlays the memory between 40 and 48K. With 16 or 32K this makes no difference, but with 48K you do lose 8K to Basic. Take out the cartridge and you have an extra 8K, although you can't then write programs in Basic. If you buy a 48K game, however, which boots without the basic cartridge, you are probably getting the full 48K use. Alright, so at this point in the magazine's lifespan, a lot of the letters to the editor were effectively technical questions. And Les did his best to answer them as he could, often with a bit of research or perhaps some help from the user group members. But yeah, a lot of people were writing in and asking for help with, with how to use their computer, basically. And that was part of the point of this magazine. Part of the point of page 6 initially was to help people get the most out of their computer. Moving on to our next program then, we've got Cricket Maths by Phil Griffin, who again was another Birmingham User Group member, I believe. Here's your chance to exercise your grey cells, not grey matter, and perhaps earn yourself a place in the next England cricket team. 3 levels of difficulty are included, and the program randomly selects maths problems which, if answered correctly, can earn runs. The outcome of a correct answer is decided randomly by the computer, and that means you may be caught even though you answered the question correctly. If you answer incorrectly, you are bowled out. The program records the total runs scored and the total number of wickets lost. On the loss of a wicket, the score at that point is recorded as last wicket, and the number of runs scored since the previous wicket was lost is recorded as last batsman. At the start of a further innings, the previous and current scores can be compared. For the technically minded, all graphics displays use modified display lists, the opening credits use graphics 1 and 2, and the animation sequence is in graphics 7. The option screen uses graphics 1 and 2, while graphics 0, 1 and 2 are used for the scoreboard. An expanded text window is used for dealing with the question and answer routines and any error messages. Score details are poked directly to the screen using the memory map screen locations. To ensure the best colour display, make sure you read all REM statements, so remark statements, comments, and use inverse video where indicated and lowercase as printed. Yeah, so over the top of this, I will put some footage of this so you can see how it looks in action. And then, yeah, that goes on for a good few pages. Then we've got a little bit about user groups here. If you run a user group and would like to get in touch with other Atari owners, let us know and we will happily publish details. See issue 2 for user groups in Merseyside, Edinburgh and Preston. Meanwhile, here's a few more contacts. So we've got GP Video Systems of Wrexham in North Wales. We've got Ken and Sherry Ward from Norwich, who are trying to get some people together to form a local user group. And Harvey Kong Tin from Hull. He ended up moving to New Zealand, I think is correct, but you'll see his name come up a couple of times. Arcade Action Reviews. In fact, you'll see Harvey Kong Tin's name come up right now. 3 more of the classic arcade games are now available for your Atari 400-800. They are reviewed here for us by reader Harvey Kong Tin, who appears to be an avid arcade gamer and a very good programmer, as I recall. And programming and graphics, I think he did, if I remember correctly. He worked with several people who were very good at making stuff for the Atari 8-bit, and I believe he's still doing stuff today. So first we've got Defender on 16K ROM, published by Atari for 1 to 2 players. The arcade game is at last available for the Atari 400-800 and plays very much like the arcade fast action and furious enemies. Like Airstrike, the game is best played with your computer on the floor, so that your foot controls the very important spacebar, which in this case controls your life-saving smart bombs. With this arrangement, a very responsive joystick, the Wyco command control is excellent. I would back that up. It is an excellent joystick when it works. Mine is broken, unfortunately. And persevered endurance, your scores will climb. For those unfamiliar with this highly rated game, your spacecraft moves in 4 directions with unlimited firepower. Your aim is to protect the humanoids on the planetoid landscape. There are 5 types of enemy craft to become familiar with, which you will need to do to climb to 100,000 points. Not sure why that's the boundary he sets. A radar screen prepares for you for any oncoming hazards as you pass over the scrolling landscape. Smart bombs obliterate any enemy on the screen except for their fire. You start off with 3 and earn an extra one for each 10,000 points. The sound didn't sound like the arcade version at first, but after a while it grows on you and starts sounding familiar. While the graphics are not sharply defined, but equal to the worst quality arcade machine, the action and pace is there for anyone hardy enough to enjoy it. This cartridge is for fans who enjoy Defender, who are willing to forgive Atari for being a bit rushed with it. Now, the Atari 8-bit version of Defender is very good. I actually prefer it to the arcade version because the controls are less confusing. You just use the joystick to move. There's none of the pressing buttons to flip around and that sort of thing. So, yeah, the Atari version of Defender is very good. I would concur with that. I don't think it feels rushed, but It may have felt a bit different when the arcade machine was a bit more current and people were a little bit more familiar with it. Next up, we've got Gorf on 16K ROM and disc from Rockland for 1 to 2 players. A quality arcade game from Rockland. This game gives you 4 different missions to go through. The first, Astro Battles, is a mini version of Space Invaders. Even if you are lousy with Space Invaders, you can easily learn to survive this mission and continue with the others. The second, Laser Attack, reminds me of Galaxian in a kamikaze sort of way. 2 ships fire lasers and the rest ram you. The third mission, Space Warp, requires you to shoot Gorfs and fighters as they emerge from a vortex. The fourth and final mission of each round is the Flagship, where you must first blast through a force field arc to shoot at the big ship. Just like Star Wars, you are aiming for a sensitive internal reactor vent. However, defensive fireballs are coming at you and rebounds of your own shots can hit you. With any ships remaining, you can go through all the hazards again, faster and faster. The graphics and sound are very well programmed, and the game should suit those fond of arcade games. The 4 separate missions add variety, and makes Gorf somewhat more challenging than the one-screen games. Yeah, Gorf is a very good game. I think we've covered it on this channel previously, but I'll put some more footage of that in it anyway. The interesting thing about the home ports is the arcade version of Gorf had a level that was outright called Galaxian, that was just a straight rip-off of Namco's Galaxian. But that was taken out for the various home versions of it. I'm not aware of any home versions of Gorf that actually have that stage still in there, so I don't know if they got into trouble for that, or if the people doing the home ports couldn't fit them into 16K, or if they just wanted to have a nice quiet life. Onwards then to Galaxian itself, 16K ROM, published by Atari for 1 to 2 players. Another direct translation of a popular arcade game. All the elements of Galaxian are there. An overhead fleet of enemy spaceships in formation which peel off to attack your ship below, and if they survive your fire, return to formation. You need to be firing constantly, once to get your gun ready and once to fire a shot. You have a choice of different levels to start at, even a beginner's level where they don't fire back. The graphics are well handled apart from the missing bright red of enemy ships. The starfield is effective and stays in the background. The sound effects are poor, though, and tend to irritate rather than add to the game. There are differences to the arcade version. You have incredible horizontal speed, enabling you to duck missiles quickly, and there are no ships that home in on you in wild parabolic paths. Overall, the cartridge doesn't match up well with the arcade game, and I guess it's a matter of taste if you find this game very playable. I would recommend trying it out before buying. A good question to end with would be, will Atari produce a version of Galaga? The graphics and sound would have to be nothing short of superb to bring this cute invader game into the home for the Atari owner. Now, I quite like the Atari 8-bit version of Galaxian, but a lot of people are a bit sniffy about it for not being truly accurate to the arcade version, and there are other games on Atari 8-bit that are closer to arcade Galaxians, with one of them being Galactic Chase that we've previously covered on this channel. But yeah, I've never had a real problem with the official version of Galaxian. It's pretty good, I think. So other stuff we've got, Sherwood's Photo advertising once again, offering the keenest price or call-in for computer things. As we mentioned in previous looks at page 6, places that did photo processing and things tended to do homewares and things as well. So you would go into somewhere like Boots, which was a high street, technically a pharmacy, but they also did photo processing. And upstairs in Boots, they'd normally have a homeware section, and there would normally be a fairly large selection of home computers, home computer games, computer software, that sort of thing up there. So yeah, Sherwood's Photo sounds like a similar sort of arrangement. Down here we got a half-page ad for creative software for Atari 400 and 800 software. So new software now available. We've got Zaxxon, Kix, Necromancer, software bargains, number of used items well below recommended retail price. Software Club, join our software club and save money on software purchases. And over here we've got a joystick, the Starfighter joystick. Not come across that before, but that looks kind of cool. There's the following features: more positive and accurate, improves game ability, less fatiguing, longer cord and easier to hold. So it's a bog standard joystick that they've tried to make sound important. Fair enough. $13.95 each, or 2 for £26. Special. Also available at competitive prices: game software, blank diskettes, accessories, utility software, memory boards, books and magazines. Onwards. Right, next thing is character redefinition. We won't read this whole article, but we'll talk a little bit about it. Let's just read this introduction because that pretty much sums it up. The Atari computer is truly an electronic marvel which offers fabulous graphics and sounds. It's for these qualities the Atari home computers are best known. There is, however, another feature that the Atari possesses which when used to best effect can be just as stunning, if not more so, than all those very impressive graphics modes. How would you like Roman-style numerals instead of the normal numbers? Or perhaps some artistic script writing like the writing you see in Scott Adams' adventures? What about some trees or perhaps grass? Some mountains might be nice. How can all this be done? It's called character redefinition. Now this is something that you can do on pretty much all computers, but it was a sort of fundamental programming technique that anyone interested in games programming on the Atari in particular would have learned relatively early on how to do, normally in conjunction with a piece of software that would help them redesign these characters. But this article here basically goes into detail about how to redefine those characters. And the basic process is that you take the existing character set and you copy it to another location in memory, and then you fiddle around with the copied version, and then you basically tell the computer to look in a different place for the redefined character set. I think that's how it worked anyway. It's been a long time since I did it. But yeah, this article goes into a lot of detail about how that works. We've got an advert for T&G software with an indecipherable thing underneath. I think that's a phone number, but I can't read that. That looks like someone's done that with a calligraphy pen. Badly. Cassette AC1 Attack Force Scramble type program with 9 stages, rockets and fuel dumps for 32k. XASACT is Zasact, I guess you'd call that. Pac-Man type program in which you fill in the maze while being chased by nasty monsters for 16k. On cassette 2 we've got Questor, this real-time adventure you have to rescue your companion who is trapped on the top level of a 300-room alien complex for 16k. Machines. And Antimatter, guide the android around the antimatter walls. Wells, even. Cassette AC3 Hoth, guess what Star Wars film came out recently. Battle with the Imperial Walkers and Cruisers as in The Empire Strikes Back. Scrolling landscape and PM, that's player missile graphics, so hardware sprites. Hazard, steer your car along the narrowing road. Avoid the rocks and roadside to gain points. Run over dogs for bonuses, 16k. Jesus. Cassettes $3.95 each plus 70 pence postage and packaging. Only one postage charge for one or more cassettes. Please state memory capacity. So again, not entirely clear if these are programs that they've published themselves or if they're public domain things or where they're getting those from. But yeah, little adverts like that, quite common. So moving on from the character redefinition article that we've just seen, we've now got a utility which allows you to create your own characters by drawing them on an on-screen grid, or typing in data statements, which allows you to take someone else's program and analyze how they put their custom characters together, or to just have a look at the characters that are currently in memory and how they're put together. So yeah, this is a type-in listing that would be very useful to have on any disks that you were using for your programming projects. Load this up, create your character sets, and I believe this would set up the data statements for you as well, so you could just load those into your program. There is a pair of very powerful commands in Atari Basic called list and enter. Now list is normally used for just listing your program to the screen, but you can also use it with a file name. So you can say list to a file on a disk. And what that does is that saves the program in a special format, which you can then use the enter command to merge it with another program. So you would list the part of the data statements that have your custom characters in. You would write your program and then you would use the enter command and the file name of the listed bit of program you did to merge the two together. It's a very powerful feature in Atari Basic. Then got a demo. This demonstration was suggested by a short program on drawing circles sent in by Terry Lawson. I've turned it into a demo of the effects available in Graphics 10. Thanks to Terry, without whose little program I would not have known how to draw a circle. This actually comes up as an oval because of the pixel layout of Graphics 10. So yeah, we'll put those up on screen right about now. And another one for rectangles down here. Again, we will put this up on screen right about now. Okay, moving on. We've got another programming tutorial type thing here called Keyboard Techniques, written by Les himself. There are two commonly used methods of obtaining input from the keyboard during a program. The first is the input statement, which can be used to input either a numeric variable or a string. And the second is the get statement, which accepts only one keystroke in the form of an ASCII number. So ASCII was Atari's variation on the ASCII standard, so it's not identical, so it's called something different. But again, it associates all of the different available characters on Atari 8-bit with a number. So when you say get what value the user is pressing on the keyboard, that will give you an ASCII number, and that will tell you what key they pressed. Yeah, here we are. Appendix C of the basic reference menu gives a full list of the ASCII character set and corresponding decimal codes. One thing both these statements have in common is that they stop the program until such time as a key is pressed, and in the case of the input statement, until return is pressed. Yeah, so this whole thing here basically gives you a means of reading input from the keyboard without interrupting your program, which is quite important for things like games, but may also be useful for applications where you need to manipulate things on the screen in real time and all that sort of thing. So useful little routine there. Got some more adverts over here. New games for Atari, Android Attack. Again, I think we saw that on the previous page, didn't we? Was that in that previous ad? I think it might have been. Where is that previous ad? Oh no, Attack Force. That's what I was thinking of. Okay, so that was something different. Android Attack. Yeah, fascination with robots and androids and all things sci-fi at the time. We got one just called ARG. A fast, frantic chase around the screen trying to catch some crazy creatures. If you catch the Super ARG, you'll get a super bonus, but don't get poisoned. Then Starbase Assault for $11.95. Oh, these are all imports from the USA. Starbase Assault. How long can you protect your starbase from the attacking alien armada? Each hit weakens your force field rings, and now they're attacking 5 at a time. And Rocketman. Navigate the Rocketman around the twists and turns of the labyrinth and back home. The Mad Spiker. Keep your saw sharp and don't step on a drain. I love the concepts of these early video games, when people were just desperately trying to find original concepts for games, and they would come up with the most bizarre stuff. And sometimes it would work really well, like something like Trashman on the ZX Spectrum is a really good example. And then other times you just think, why did you make a game of this? Why did you do this? Then over here we got Channel 8 Software, which I think we said previously, they became most well known for their adventure games, and indeed they've got a selection of them there. The Golden Baton, Arrow of Death Part 1 and 2, The Time Machine, Escape from Pulsar 7, Circus and Feasibility Experiment. Then we've got other games that aren't adventures presumably. Bomb Hunter, Murder at Awesome Hall and Caves of Death for cassette or disc. The Constructor utility for Atari, which if I remember correctly was for making sprites. Games for VIC-20 and Commodore 64 as well. Moving on. Okay, we've then got another character designer here. This is a slightly shorter listing. Editor's note, this program does not offer all the facilities of the character generation utility, but is superb graphically and very easy to use. It only uses 16K. So yeah, if you were using a machine that didn't have quite as much memory, it may have been in your interest to make use of that program instead of the longer one from earlier. Then over here we move on to software reviews. So we have two from Microprose first of all, very early incarnation of Microprose, Floyd of the Jungle and Chopper Rescue. So I think these were both Sid Meier games, if I remember correctly. I certainly remember reading about them in his memoir. So he was involved in these, I think. I can't remember if he actually created them or not, but I certainly remember reading about them. So Floyd of the Jungle, silly title. Still, I suppose that Tarzan is copyrighted. Yes, it was, and Edgar Rice Burroughs' estate was always very litigious about that, which led to things like Taito having to rebrand their Jungle Hunt arcade game because it originally starred a character that looked a bit like Tarzan. And so a lot of people were very conscious of Tarzan being copyrighted, so they avoided using him at any opportunity. they had a sort of jungle setting. So Floyd is as good as any. In this game, you as Floyd have to rescue the lovely Janice by thrashing your way through the jungle, which is set up like a combination of Apple Panic and Frogger. Instead of ladders, you have vines to climb, and instead of the assorted perils of Frogger, you have snakes, alligators, tigers, pygmies, monkeys, and elephants all wandering along ready to eat or squash you. You still have the river with boats to jump on to get across. On the way to saving Janice, you can score points by capturing birds and, quote, punching pygmies. Okay, fair enough. Trouble is, it is hard to tell the difference between the birds, pygmies and the monkeys are deadly. Of course they are. The biggest plus of the game is that it allows up to 4 players, all Floyds, at the same time to race against each other in a bid to become the first to rescue the damsel. The screen is very colourful with snakes hissing back and forth, alligators opening and closing their mouths, monkeys swaying to and fro, etc. And Floyd actually runs with arms and legs going full pelt. Point him in the right direction with the joystick and press the fire button to watch him bound along or jump over the animals. Watch out for those poison pygmy darts along the way. Once you get the timing right for your jumps, the game is not too difficult, and as you have unlimited Floyds, it doesn't matter too much if you're eaten, you only return to the beginning. Screen 2 is harder obviously, and Screen 3 has the rivers across and plenty of elephants. Playing solo, I quickly got up to Screen 3, and once I had mastered riding the elephants, managed to rescue Janice. I eagerly look forward to the super challenges of Screen 4, only to find that the game ended. You have to start at a high level to get to Screens 4 and 5. To master this game is fairly easy, but then it's not really a one-player game. All the fun comes in racing against the other Floyds and picking up bonus birds and pygmies while watching your opponents being eaten by alligators. At times the game can get quite hilarious and you won't know whether to concentrate on your own Floyd or watch the others in peril. If you're a dedicated gamer and welcome the big challenge, don't bother with Floyd of the Jungle, but if you want some fun, particularly if you know someone with 2 more joysticks, this could be just the game. I imagine that the kids will love it. Yeah, the Atari 400 and 800 had 4 controller ports, but games that offered 4-player simultaneous play were actually relatively rare, which accounts for why the 800XL and 130XE subsequently only had 2 joystick ports, because 2-player games were much more common. But yeah, it's nice to know that there is a 4-player simultaneous game that actually supports those early machines in the form of Floyd of the Jungle. Then we have Chopper Rescue. Again, 1 to 4 players. Not really what I imagined it to be. I had expected this to be another version of Choplifter, but it's an underground labyrinth type game where you have to fly your chopper and rescue people from ledges and various nooks and crannies. Of course, there are plenty of things to stop you. These games are never that easy. I was quite taken with Chopper Rescue. It is playable, yet still has excuse my watch. It is playable, yet still has a lot of challenge. Not being the world's best arcade player, I get fed up with games that kill me off every 5 seconds, but I found in Chopper Rescue that you at least had a chance when danger lurked. There are plenty of obstacles to your rescue mission. Laser guns are stationed on the walls, bomb pods shoot spinning explosives upwards, while force fields bar your way. All of these can be destroyed with either your missiles or bombs. There are also several pulsating pods that either supply energy to the enemy lasers or act as hatching plants for the mutants that come for you every so often. Didn't I mention them? Oh well, you can kill them off. Best idea is to destroy everything in sight. That way you are safer and get more points. After rescuing 10 hostages, you go into a more difficult labyrinth with more obstacles and pods. Some of these are very difficult to get to, but you can release your bombs with forward momentum and sort of throw them into the narrow channels. A word about the confusion over the energy pods. The problem is that with these microprose games, the documentation is pretty basic to say the least. In fact, considering the price, normal Atari prices, it is downright poor. I know that it's the game that counts and this one is very good, but if we have to continue paying these high prices, then would it not be asking too much to have an extensive and well-presented literature for our money? That's funny. That's funny when you consider Microprose became known for their flight simulators that had incredibly elaborate, beautifully presented manuals. That's funny to think of them starting out with someone complaining at them for poor documentation. That is funny. Okay, onwards then to Raidus. Never heard of this one actually. Pyramid software, 16K cassette or 32K disc. The disparity is usually because disc versions often need to load DOS into memory, and that sometimes doesn't leave enough space for the game on 16K machines. The latest space action game Raidus has you in an attack fighter within the mothership high above one of the planets of the Cronian Empire. Miles below on the planet's surface is one of the evil overlords, mechanical devices that act as security posts for the Cronians. You must leave the mothership, fly down to the planet's surface while avoiding the enemy patrols and space boulders, find and destroy the evil overlord, and return to the mothership to continue your mission on another planet. The action is spread across dozens of screens, but the game does not scroll, rather it flips from screen to screen but does give the impression of continuous movement. The graphics of the mothership and the cities on the planet's surface are very good, but out in space are just hundreds of stars, too many to make it look realistic. Yes, because space is notoriously short on stars. What's it like to play? Hard. In fact, I found it so hard that I lost the majority of my craft just getting out of the mothership. Control is by the joystick, but once you move in one direction, you carry on moving and can go careering from screen to screen until you inevitably crash into something. The only way to slow down is by applying thrust in the opposite direction, but it's not easy. The effect is rather like trying to drive a car on an ice rink. What is it like at the more difficult levels? I dread to think. During the time I had this game to review, I didn't even get down to the planet's surface, and there are 216 levels in all. Yes, 216. What's more, each level can only be accessed by a password gained by completing the previous level. If you want a real challenge, then this game appears ideal. It easily lives up to its claim of being a game you will not easily master, and with 216 levels of play you will have to spend many hours or weeks developing your skills before you can claim to have completed your mission. Yeah, not familiar with that game at all, so we'll make sure there's some footage of that in the background so we can see what that looks like. Next up is Hellcat Ace, which is a flight simulator for 1 to 4 players, I think it's... I thought this was 2 players simultaneous, but apparently there's up to 4. Go and get the seatbelt from the car and strap yourself into the chair. You'll need it for this World War II flying simulation. The screen gives you the view from the cockpit of your aircraft as you battle against the Japanese in 14 different scenarios based on actual events in the battles of the Pacific in World War II. The graphics are simple, but the overall effect is quite stunning as you bank, dive, climb or loop the loop to get the enemy in your gun sights. There are even instructions on how to do Immelmann turns and split S's, which are pretty straightforward to do, to be perfectly honest. The sun lies just above the horizon, and as you turn away the sky darkens to give you an idea of your heading. That's quite cool. You can do all of the manoeuvres expected, and if you get into trouble you can try to ditch or bail out. For the more experienced there are night missions. This is a great simulation giving a real feel of action, but I've never flown a light aircraft and do not know how accurate it is. Any RAF flying officers out there who are into computer games? Is this as realistic as it seems? I thought it was great. Fair enough. at least you admit it. Then we have Legionnaire by Avalon Hill for 16k cassette. Legionnaire is the latest offering by Chris Crawford, the man who designed Eastern Front, which was a major step forward in microcomputer gaming. Yeah, Eastern Front and Legionnaire are noteworthy for being some of the very earliest examples of pretty much real-time strategy games, long before we knew that was a thing. So a lot of war games on home computers at the time were turn-based, but Legionnaire, and I think Eastern Front as well, I'm not super familiar with that one, but Legionnaire certainly has a real-time element where you can move stuff around on the map, and yeah, stuff happens even if you don't touch the controls, which is interesting. Legionnaire is better than Eastern Front, much better. It has all of the challenge unless you're a very experienced wargamer, better looking graphics, multiple choices of scenario, and above all the battles happen in real time. Yeah, so it's specifically called out here. Still no game save feature, but with all the options available you can choose a fairly short campaign. For those not familiar with the style of Eastern Front, the structure of Legionnaire is of a large map of the terrain on which your battles will take place. The map scrolls in any direction is perhaps 12 times larger than your television screen, so that the battles taking place are outside of your immediate vision. You command Caesar and up to 9 other legions in battles against barbarian tribes that outnumber you 2 to 1. By giving your troops orders of movement, you can use the terrain to best advantage to attack, outflank or surround your enemy. Everything is programmed in. Slow movement uphill, fatigue and morale of the troops, strength, fighting ability, losses in combat, all are taken care of by the computer, and the current state of any unit can be seen by positioning the cursor over a unit and pressing the fire button. There's a 20-page manual which gives you historical background, details of the various legions at your command, and details of the barbarians' tribes. You need to get some idea of the capabilities of your units beforehand, because as soon as you press the start button the barbarians start advancing. Remember, this is in real time and requires some quick thinking. Legionnaire is an excellent demonstration of the capabilities of your Atari. Its presentation will make owners of other computers wonder why they didn't buy the best. Atari themselves did not want this in their catalogue, which shows exactly why they're not making the headway they should be with the best computer on the market. All credit to Avalon Hill, although they were not taking much of a gamble, for Legionnaire is a surefire success. Only one criticism, and that is the lack of credit to Chris Crawford in the packaging. His name only appears in small type as game designer, and Avalon Hill ought to realise that in the Atari world the name of Chris Crawford is now synonymous with that of Scott Adams. I'm not sure synonymous is what they meant there, but what they What they mean is that Scott Adams was an enormously respected name in the adventure game genre, and Chris Crawford was similarly respected in strategy games and other things. Chris Crawford still is, someone who is gleefully experimental with game mechanics. And he pushed a lot of genres forward in the early days of home computing. Like I say, there was Eastern Front was his big World War II strategy game. Legionnaire basically revolutionised the real-time strategy subgenre. And yeah, his stuff was always worth a look. So next up on this page, we've got the Page 6 Awards. You could win up to £50 worth of software in our annual awards. At the end of our first year, we'll have a readers' poll to find the best programs, articles and reviews on the first 6 issues. Page 6 was bi-monthly throughout most of its lifespan. All contributions to the magazine are welcomed, and this could be your chance to earn fame and fortune. Send your contribution now. Okay, we've got another program here. Master Directory by Colin Friston. As an extension to the disk directory in issue 2, I now present a master directory which will give you a printout of all the programs on your disks in alphabetical order. The program will request the insertion of all of your disks one after another and store the contents in 2 strings. These are then sorted in alphabetical order and printed out. The program can accept up to 300 entries and has the facility in line 1000 to exclude often recurring items such as DOS and DUPSys, which is part of DOS. Yeah, useful little program that for cataloguing your disks. If you did a lot of programming, you would probably end up with a lot of disks with a lot of basic programs on. And so having a catalogue so you knew where everything was would have been very helpful. Okay, a little correction bit here. Whoops, error 17. Like all the quality magazines, we need a blunders corner sometimes, which we will call error 17. Look it up in your manual. Issue 2 contained the following, which should be amended. 4 in a row, line 10,045 should be deleted. In the article GTIA modes, the word line in the third paragraph should read you. Fair enough. Okay, we're getting close to the end now. So we now have the first step section, which I think was still by Les at this point, but that got taken over by a guy called Mark Hutchinson for lots of Page 6's lifespan. Don't think he's taken over just yet, so I think this is just Les, because generally speaking, if there's no credit, that's probably Les writing it. Many beginners do not understand REM statements and believe they are responsible for program errors. They are in a way, if you don't bother to read them. A REM statement actually has no effect at all on the running of a program. It is there to help you understand what is going on and give you help in typing and the listing. Yeah, so REM statements are just the equivalent of what we have as comments today. So you would put a line in with REM for remark, and then you can type whatever you want after REM because it's just a comment on the program. And you'll see throughout all the programs in this issue, there's REM statements to sort of show what the program's by, and often throughout they document the different parts of the program and say what it's doing. And that became a sort of standard thing in programs that were published in Page 6, because one of the things Les wanted to do with the typing listings was not just let people have free software, but help people to learn how to use their computer and how to program it themselves. So yeah, REM statements are really useful. And a few other tips here. Did you know you can stop a listing by scrolling up the screen by pressing Control and 1 at the same time? Yep, that's very useful. Pressing them again will start the listing up again. Even the experts took a long time to figure that out. Yeah, entirely possible that wasn't in the original Atari 8-bit manual, because there were a lot of features that were not in that manual. The original 400 800 had pretty good manuals, but the quality of those manuals kind of declined a bit over time. And so a lot of stuff was relegated to third-party instruction manuals, word of mouth, user groups, that sort of thing. The Atari has superb editing facilities, but few people seem to use them properly. Sit down a while and look at Chapter 3 of the reference manual and play around with the screen. If you use editing properly, you will save a lot of time. Suppose, for example, you have to type the following lines. Instead of typing both lines, type in line 10 and then use the Control up arrow keys to put the cursor over the 1 of 10 and type 2. Yeah, so you could actually move the cursor around the screen and edit stuff similar to how you do in a word processor these days. And you could do that to basically duplicate lines, you could do that to delete lines, you could do that to edit lines. Very powerful editing features in Atari Basic. And then on to the back page. So at the moment we've still got the Bug Club call, which is the page devoted to the Birmingham User Group, which was the birthplace of Page 6. B.U.G seems to be getting bigger. If you've attended the last few meetings, you'll know how crowded it can get. That's good to see, because I know last issue Les was complaining about people came along to the most boring meeting of the year, the sort of I think it was like the Constitution meeting or something like that, and he was bemoaning the fact that the club was not seeming to attract new members. So it was good that it seemed to pick up from there. We must start thinking about some solutions to make sure that everybody gets a look in and finds it worthwhile to attend. 2 things are being considered: weekly meetings and a bigger meeting place. We need your help on both. There's no point in arranging weekly meetings if there's not going to be enough support, and please bear in mind that the meetings do take a lot of effort to organise. If you are genuinely interested in meeting weekly, let us know and indicate what sort of format you'd be most happy with. The room we have at present, which I believe would have still been in the Matador pub in Birmingham at this point, it's good value despite its limitations, but we would like to be able to consider alternatives, either for alternate meetings if we go weekly, or as a new permanent home. Somebody knows of a room in Birmingham, either a hotel pub or club, which might be suitable. Please make some inquiries and let one of the committee know. We may well stay where we are, but at least it would be handy to know if there are alternatives. Mike Aston's basic course will have come to an end by now, but the club is anxious to continue to provide tutorials for members. Yeah, this is one thing that I am a bit sad that I am too young to have been able to attend, because I think I would have really enjoyed going along to these user groups and being able to experience lessons basically on how to program the computer, because I learned a lot from reading magazines and books and things. But I think it would have taken things to a whole other level if I'd had the opportunity to actually work with people in a club environment, in a sort of classroom situation, and learn things like that. So I'm a bit sad that I never had the opportunity to do that, and that's just not a thing that happens anymore. Now that the membership has grown, there are many diverse interests among members, and we need a way to channel interest so that everyone has an opportunity to join in something which they are interested. We want to develop a number of special interest groups which will run on a self-help basis, where half a dozen or so like-minded people can get together to explore a particular area. It could be anything from writing an adventure to learning a new language or writing machine language games. It could be something as simple as getting a party to play Zork. Being part of a small group will help you to develop more quickly and will give you the opportunity to meet outside the club. Something good will come out of some of the groups, such as writing a book or developing a game to market. Yeah, really, really interesting. Actually, interestingly here, Stop Press meetings are now weekly, but check first that there are some dates when we can't have the room. B.U.G's first software cassette was on sale at the Midlands Computer Fair, where we had a stand. Available to members and non-members at a ridiculously low price. If you'd like a copy, phone Mike Reynolds James for availability. Yes, I suspect what they were doing there is what would eventually grow into the Page 6 public domain library, which was a library of discs containing software from user groups, from newsletters, from magazines, all on a disk, freely redistributable. Page 6 would make a little bit of money by selling those discs, basically packaging them up, posting them out, saving people the trouble of typing stuff in. And then we've got a little hand-drawn advert for B.U.G itself there. Then we've got an ad for Up and Away, which is a game we covered a long time ago on Atari A to Z. How do you fancy getting away from it all with a trip in a hot air balloon? Sounds tempting, doesn't it? But it takes skill and fast reactions to avoid all the hazards. Are you up to it? Yeah, Up and Away is a really interesting little game. It's a very slow-paced game, but it's also very difficult. You fly a hot air balloon and you've got to toss out sandbags to hit targets and avoid various obstacles, including little kids throwing stones at your balloon and lightning storms and all sorts of things. It was a good game. It was very well received on its original release. It's cool to see a full-page ad for it there, but they were charging $21.95 for it, which is a lot of money. And then on the back page, we once again have Callisto Computers, who this time are advertising Preppy, Eliminator, Sea Dragon, Stratus, we've seen all those before, Floyd of the Jungle, that was reviewed this issue, Chopper Rescue, Hellcat Ace, Miner 2049, Zaxxon, and Astro Chase. So those are all very familiar games to what we've previously covered on the channel, or that we've seen this issue. So yeah, so that was issue 3 of Page 6 magazine, which I was going to check the date, didn't I? And I didn't. May, June 1983 this issue was from. So yeah, very early in the magazine's lifespan, but you can already see it really taking shape into what it would eventually become as a real enthusiast magazine. It was not just about games, it was not just about stereo stuff, it was about all of the things you could do with your home computer. It was about programming, it was about enjoying games, it was about you doing useful, productive things with your computer. It was a magazine, as it says, it was an Atari users magazine. It was for people to enjoy their computer and get the most out of it. This magazine means so much to me. It's such an important part of my life, such an important part of my childhood, that yeah, I love going back through these magazines, even though very little of it is directly relevant to today. I just love reading these articles for the first time, typing in the listings, reading about the games when they first came out. It's just a delight. It's such an important thing to me, and yeah, I'm really happy that I still have the original copies of all these that we had growing up, that my dad kept hold of and rather graciously let go of a while back, and let me have all of them so I could read them, enjoy them and share them with you. So I hope you enjoyed having a look at issue 3 today. We will come back and have a look at issue 4 in some indeterminate point in the future, and I may well start having a look at some other magazines as well. I've got some that I've got some physical versions of, and I've got some that I've got PDFs that we can have a look at as well, because the actual physical ones are a bit harder to find. But for today, that was issue 3 of Page 6 magazine. Hope you enjoyed that. As always, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you again next time.